via a text message and social media campaign. The extreme graphic nature of these materials was more than most parents could handle. Leftists on the school board dismissed the issue as quote-unquote drama, and then they attacked David Hamilton for exposing the issue. They protested the exposure of the pornography, but appeared to take no issue with the books being available in the library. And I will quote one of the Fort Bend ISD board members who opposes David Hamilton's efforts. Quote, "We need to stop with the drama," unquote, Fort Bend ISD trustee Shirley Rose Gillum. So here you can see it's apparent that Shirley Rose Gillum thinks that pornography being taught to the children is drama. It's not a legitimate issue for the school board. This culminated in a vote for an expedited process to remove these obscene materials from the school libraries, which ultimately resulted in the policy proposal to be tabled for a further debate. However, leftists on the board directly opposed this efficient way to remove these materials. So as I understand it, the school board voted to expedite the process of getting rid of these school materials without going through a formal vote process, all with the intent of protecting these children from seeing these illicit materials. And I want to tell you that the images and the materials that were being exposed, these weren't simply Playboy magazines. This was something graphic, disgusting, despicable, things that can't be put into words, things that are not even appropriate for adults. It's really gross. And we have to ask the question, who is putting these materials in our children's libraries? Who wants our children's minds to be corrupted in these ways? But now I will quote another leftist on the school board who opposes David Hamilton's efforts to expose these materials. Quote, "I implore my colleagues on this bias to reject the draft of EF Local before you and consider preventing this item from moving forward to a vote," unquote, Fort Bend ISD trustee Angie Hainan. So she felt that this matter should not even be brought to a vote. Adam Schoof, who was a candidate for the school board at the time and is now a member of the Fort Bend ISD, had a very interesting perspective on this matter. Adam Schoof pointed out in a recent interview that not complying with HB 900 potentially places teachers in a vulnerable position. And I'm going to quote Adam now, quote, Potentially educators can now be charged under penal code if they display certain sexually gratifying materials to the children," unquote. That is Adam Schoof, who was at the time a Fort Bend ISD candidate and is now on the Fort Bend ISD school board. But to sum up what Adam is saying, he is basically saying, in other words, that the FBISD police may be put in the uncomfortable position of having to arrest teachers due to leftist influences in the curriculum. So we certainly have a number of items raging at the school boards to these days. These two issues are things in our rearview mirror, but the agenda of the left still stands and is still fighting for another day. And the elections are just maybe 6 weeks away, so everything's coming to the surface again. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on this show, we will bring you all of the ideas, the content, the information that you need to take back your local towns, your local communities, your school boards, your counties, our Texas counties, the great state of Texas, and our country. But there is an obligation that comes with this show, and the obligation is on you. And the obligation is to get involved at the local level, because this is happening on our watch. There is a fight for the minds of our children happening today. There is a fight to take traditional values away from our children, to take a moral code away from our children, to remove parental authority from our parents regarding our children. All of this is happening on your watch, and it's very important because we're in a critical time right now. We're coming down to the elections, and all of these candidates, they need to be asked about these matters. And I want to make this personal note. A lot of these candidates are not coming totally clean on where they stand on these issues. They're trying to play politics. They're trying to play funny business. And it's very important that we hold them to their words, that we get their positions out there without any questions. And that's only going to happen if you get involved. If you begin to question these candidates, they all live in our counties. They all live in our communities. So it can happen. It's on you. And you can make a difference in taking back our school districts and taking back our cities, our towns, our villages, our boroughs, our school districts, our counties, and our state. And with that being said, we have an interesting show today. We have 3 guests on the show, and on the show, on the phone lines, we should have G2. G2, are you there?
I am, Chris.
Excellent, very good. G2 calling in from the Midwest. We appreciate him being on our show. And in the audience, we have Chris Matthews, who is he is the Texas Conservative Forum youth leader. Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Chris.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. And finally, we have Angela Collins, candidate for Fort Bend ISD trustee position 3.
3. Yes. Good morning. How are you?
Good. Very good to see you today.
You too.
Well, very good. I want to start off with introductions. G2 is a regular. Everyone knows G2 in Fort Bend County. So please.
Should we have these on?
Oh, yes, please
him?
put the headphones on. Sorry, guys.
I thought I heard him.
It's an early morning, and I tend to sleep in on my Saturdays, and I think I'm still a little sleepy from a hard week. But with that being said, Chris, this is the first time you're on our show. Welcome. Thank you for being on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Texas Conservative Forum?
Yeah, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show again. It's a great opportunity to meet with you and discuss important topics of the day. So a little bit about me. I was born in Houston, Texas. Grew up here my entire life here in Fort Bend County. I've attended Fort Bend ISD public schools, Dallas High School. I went to Texas A&M University, did my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and worked in the oil and gas industry for about 4 years now. So I've learned a lot of things in the industry, and looking forward to talking to you. The Texas Conservative Forum, it's a group that promotes conservative values and principles within the South Asian community, particularly in the Indian community. And so, through this organization, we get together and have discussions about the conservative principles and events that are going on, and hopefully, we're trying to add new members and promote these values to the community at large. So it's a little bit about the Texas Conservative Forum.
Very good. When I was a kid, there were no conservative groups, none. And now they just seem to be popping up everywhere. I think that the conservatives are the cool kids again. It's a different day and age.
Yeah, that's correct. I think that's evident through this past election too. A lot of different groups of people, different communities are pushing towards the conservative principles. So I think that's a good trend. So hopefully they'll be able to stay the long term.
Yep. Very good. And Angela, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Very good to see you again.
You too.
So you're running for Fort Bend ISD board position 3.
Yes.
Correct?
I am.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I as well grew up in Fort Bend. I've lived in Fort Bend for over 40 years, well over 40 years. Went to elementary school, middle school, high school in Fort Bend County. Raised my 3 children in one is grown and gone, but raising 2 children in Fort Bend schools, and my grandchildren also were attending Fort Bend. So I have it's in my heart. I have a vested interest in Fort Bend. I've lived there, most of my life. So I love the community aspect. If you look at any of the disasters or anything like that, Fort Bend, we rally like no one else. So mom of 3, grandmother of 4 children, have lived in Fort Bend almost my entire life. I also work in oil and gas. I have a financial background of 20 years now working in oil and gas, and I also work on standard operating procedures and writing policy for our company. And so that's part of my qualifications. I love policy, looking at policy, breaking it down, all of that, auditing. I decided to run for school board initially because of special education. I am a parent advocate for foster children that live in Fort Bend. They live in group homes. And last year I had 13 children that I advocated for within the foster care system. Additionally, my 2 children also have special needs. I have one that's autistic and one is dyslexic, and they both have ADHD. So initially I decided to run because special education is broken in Fort Bend. Then I started digging into all the other things, and everything is broken. And I've met so many families that have pulled their children out of Fort Bend ISD, and it breaks my heart coming from Fort Bend ISD. It breaks my heart that just in my neighborhood alone, there was at least 6 families that I know of that pulled their children out of the school district because they didn't feel heard, or they weren't getting what they needed, or whatever the case was. So I was like, I'm going to run. The bonds were a mess. Special education was a mess. Everything I have looked at was a mess, and it just took me down a rabbit hole. Every topic that I looked up. So I was like, I'm going to run. I do so much in the community, and I'm on so many committees and do the advocacy work and all of this. I felt like it was just an extension of what I already do. Maybe at a way bigger scale. So I decided to run, and it's been a journey, I would say.
What do you attribute the decline of Fort Bend schools? What do you attribute it to?
There's so many things. In the last 2 years, I've talked to teachers. I have close relationships with all kinds of teachers all over the district. And they have said these last 2 years have been the hardest years. I would say 3 years now, because I've been doing this for a little while. So 2.5 years, 3 years. This is the hardest last 3 years of their entire career. And you're talking about teachers that have been working for school districts for 20, 30 years. It's the kids not knowing how to behave, the parents not knowing how to act, the additional paperwork that they have to do daily, the lack of planning, the pay, there's so many different things. And like I said, on the parent side, they're not feeling heard. Their kids are getting lost in the system. There's so many things. So.
And what do you bring to the table to rectify the situation?
My heart, for one. I have always, everything I have done has been surrounded by children. Whether it be volunteering at the school for a carnival, or being on a committee, or I was on PTO for like 8 years, 3 of which I was the president. We had the ESL teacher come to us as a board, as a PTO board, and she wanted this program for the kids to help read. This was after COVID. And so we paid for it as a board, as a PTO board. We paid for this program for 2 years. The kids did so much better in reading that the school actually implemented that curriculum into the budget for the kids in ESL. I feel like on a financial aspect, I can help. When I went in to be president during COVID, if we didn't do anything that year, we were going to be running at a $13,000 deficit. By the end of my term, we had over $100,000 in the bank as a PTO. I'm very out of the box.
You did that as PTO president?
Yes.
What you said?
Yeah.
Was it PTO for all of Fort Bend schools or just for a certain?
Just our school.
Was
Just the elementary.
Meadows Place Elementary? Mm-hmm. Very good.
Yes.
I remember that. I'm a resident of Meadows Place as well, and I remember the flyers coming out announcing that it was something that was uplifting for the whole city of Meadows Place. So you were behind that.
Well, my team.
That's an incredible accomplishment.
Thank you. I was also asked to be on the panel to hire the principal when the last principal left. And I don't know of any other parent that has ever been asked to be on a panel to hire a principal.
So you're involved at the ground level.
Yes, absolutely.
Where a lot of these candidates are coming in and they're laying out their high-level resumes and their advanced college degrees and their executive positions. You are saying, no, I'm an everyday American.
Yes.
And my successes have all happened at the very local neighborhood level.
Well, and I'm a boots on the ground kind of girl. I changed the carburetor on my leaf blower. I'm not afraid to work. I'm not afraid to put in hard work or a lot of hours. As PTO president, I probably put in 30, 40 hours a week. And then on top of that, I did the advocacy for the kids. So, and full-time mom and full-time job. So I'm not afraid to work at the ground level. If it's broke, you get in there and you fix it.
So, G2, you've heard Angela's background to some extent. I know you have a lot of experience, interviewing candidates and school boards. Tell me, do you have any questions for Angela?
Well, first of all, the reality of the Fort Bend ISD is that it's a very, very large school system, and the funding for that school system is quite significant. But when you look at the school system, you start to think about what could make it better. One of the first things that has to jump out is the overhead burden, right? You've got some financial improvements that can be made. Those are all things that are really important, but nothing is as important as what you started the show on and what you've been talking about since. Mm-hmm. The idea that these school systems all over the nation are being used to groom children, to exploit their I think Chris, you put it well, their sort of, immaturity, they're naive and they're questioning. And these organizations that permeate these school boards and these school districts then grab a hold of those kids mentally and emotionally and begin pushing them down this path toward questioning their sexuality, questioning their culture, rejecting their parents' teachings. When you say that the person you're opposing believes that 1 out of 2 parents will abuse their children.
Okay, real quick, just to make clear.
That is a bizarre, extraordinary, extreme, radical position.
Yeah, that example was given. That example was given from a candidate in another race, so I want to make that clear. Her opponent did not say that. So, yeah. And G2's calling in from the industrial Midwest, but he's very he's somewhat active because of the show in Fort Bend local issues. But at the same time, he doesn't, he's not here on the ground. But go ahead, please, G2.
Yeah, I've looked at Harris County and Fort Bend County school systems, financial reports and statistics, so I've got a sense of what you got there. But here's the biggest problem, I think. It's not just that these demons are inside the school systems. It's that they're inside the school systems in Texas, where parents think kids are safe because they think Texas has a conservative culture. And then the average parent believes that none of this could possibly happen because there would be laws protecting their children from pornography in schools and so on. Are you finding that the parents you're talking to understand what's happening in the schools and they're really demanding change? Or are you finding more complacency and a lack of awareness?
I personally think there is a lack of awareness for a lot of issues. When I started digging into all of the different rabbit holes I was going in, the library policy I had to research a little bit because I had no idea these books were in the schools myself. You know, there are some that have been removed. There are some that have not been removed. And I think generally, and I was talking about this the other day, if you go back and you look at any of the board meetings or forums or anything that has gone on, everybody always says there's going to be transparency and communication, but there's not. This has always been an issue. It's something that everybody complains about. And I have an issue with people throwing transparency, the words transparency and communication around, because there isn't. There's no communication. You go on the website.
And that kind of goes to the heart of the issue, isn't it? That parents are, the reason parents aren't more aggressively calling for change is because without that transparency, they don't know what's going on. And
Right.
so now it falls to radio shows like this one, and it falls to the candidates to make them aware. Does
Yes.
that make it a harder climb as a candidate?
Yes, it does. Actually, I was going to run last year, and there were 4 or 5 people in the race. I don't remember. I was concerned about running and it being a conflict of interest with the advocacy work that I do with the kids in special education. So I spoke with one of the other people that were running, and we had the same values and views as far as like where the district should be going. So we talked multiple times, multiple hours, and decided I would step down with the promise of being backed 100% this year, which has been very challenging because I was actually told by my opponent he would back me this year to run, and then he decided to run because nobody knew who I was. My name was not.
You're
What's the
known.
word?
You're local.
Name
You're,
recognition.
I'm local. I
Sure.
don't have a lot of name recognition.
she's known in Meadows Place, but she's not known countywide.
Right.
That's
So-
that's what,
Well, and that's a challenge that every new candidate that comes up for school board who is running because they're concerned about children, generally concerned about protecting them from these radical monsters that are grooming them and the pornography, and who really want to focus on education. That's a common problem, and it's a hard one to overcome. But when people become aware of the issues, the name recognition problem slides to the side because people now begin seeking candidates who will protect their kids. At least that's what we've seen.
Right. Right. Well, and, hopefully my name is getting out there a
it is
little
getting
bit.
out there. I want to say a couple things real quick. G2, if you want to try calling back, that I'll move to Chris right now. But if you want to try hanging
Great.
up, creating a new line, I think that echo will go away.
To clear the problem?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Let me hang up on him. And I'm a tech novice myself, so we have an engineer in the room. You should be handling the phone lines.
A different type of engineer.
Yeah, G2, are you there?
I am.
Perfect, and no echo.
There you
Awesome.
go.
Okay, great. Chris, you are a graduate of Fort Bend Schools.
Yeah, that's correct.
You're still active in the community. I heard you say in the room that you think that Fort Bend Schools is on a decline. Give me your opinion of Fort Bend Schools today.
Yeah, so back when I was in public schooling, I went to Lexington Creek Elementary, Dulles Middle School, Dulles High School. There was a certain quality, high quality of education that we had. And but from what I've heard from family members who have kids in these public schools, the quality has certainly declined. I think it's the level of teaching, the level of standards I think teachers have for their students, and I think resources in general. I know a lot of the schools have been overpopulated, especially Dulles High School, and so I think all these things need to be addressed. And but I know I've heard people saying they want to move their kids to private schools. The quality of education is better. The values the teachers have and the principals have is a lot better. So, and it more aligns with the family values. So I think those issues, if those are able to be resolved in the school level, I think it would help a lot with the kids and the families, and then the parents would have a lot more confidence in sending their kids to public schools. So, but yeah, there's definitely been a decline from family members I've seen. They've been telling me about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two things need to happen in our schools. Number one, President Trump is in the process, it appears, of ending the Department of Education. We need to get that federal influence out of our schools, and we need to get the leftist influence out of our schools. It is a communist, Marxist ideology, and it is here to corrupt. And I think that we've already made that evident in this short show that we have today. Okay, so I want to go to this, what I discussed earlier in the show, which was the Fort Bend ISD vote. And there was, again, David Hamilton exposed that there were illicit pornographic materials in our schools. And he exposed them. He was attacked in the process. And there was a vote to expedite the process of removing pornographic materials from the school library. And I believe, I don't hold me to this, but as I understand it, that would mean that the superintendent would be able to step in before a formal vote would happen, and he'd be able to say, these books are too taboo. They got to go. He'd get them out right here and right now. And anyone, the Fort Bend ISD superintendent, he is having an increasingly growing reputation in a credible manner. He's getting a lot of respect. It appears that he's doing a really good job. So, I think it's important to support that. I'd like to point out that Rick Garcia voted for the removal of the he voted for this measure, right, to expedite the process of removing these materials. And I just want to point that out because there's a little bit of confusion earlier in this show. So Rick voted the right way. David Hamilton voted the right way. I believe Sonia voted the right way. But ultimately, or at least I want to say they supported it. But it was tabled for another day. And so the first question I want to ask each of you is, Angela, I'm going to start with you. If that vote was presented to you today, where today's superintendent would be able to remove those pornographic materials in a quick manner before it would come to a formal vote before the board or whoever, would you support that measure?
Yes, I would, because I'm very big on age-appropriate content. And when all of this spiked, just to make sure my mind was clear, because when you watch the board meetings and stuff, they would talk about young adults and this and that. And so if you look up the definition of young adult, it's like 18 to 25, right? That's young adult. Well, 12th grade possibly could have some 18-year-olds in there. But I don't want my 9th grader going and pulling content. So definitely I would be okay with them pulling the books if they feel like it's necessary. It's in the code. Excuse me. Some of the books were so inappropriate, I could not speak about them. Like, I wouldn't be comfortable talking about them, and I'm 46. It's in the Texas Code. If you look in the Texas Penal Code, 43.24, 23, or 2324 and 25, it has the verbiage of what is harmful material. It's clearly stated in the Texas Code. So I didn't know why I couldn't understand why there was so much back and forth. Because it's already written. There's already laws written about it.
I mean, the way I look at it is like, why is the default position that we're going to go ahead and just flood your child's mind, flood your child with all types of visions of all these indecent images? With the click of a button in any direction on the computer, they can bring up whatever materials they want. The default position is that the materials will be there until the parent blocks them. In the school libraries, they could go check out books. The default position is that unless they want the parent to go review all these books, and then the parent decides which one should be prevented from their child seeing. Why is that the default position? Why isn't it reversed? Why isn't the default position that these materials will be largely removed from our vision, removed from our society, and we make it so that, only by, that with a small margin of error can you access these materials. I think that all needs to be reversed. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's terrible what's happening in these public schools, having all this content out there for kids to read. Back when I was in public schools, we never had, this was like non-issue back then. But now with the push from the left to have all these images and all these books out there, it's detrimental to our kids. It's terrible what's happening, and I think these books should be screened by teachers, parents. They should know what their kids are reading. And so, yeah, that's what I think about that issue.
Right. Well, what you said, real quick, you believe that fixing the schools means bringing back family values.
Yeah, that's correct.
No family wants their child seeing those images. Go ahead, Angela.
Well, I mean, there are some parents that I've seen in the board meetings and stuff, and they're okay with some of the content, I would say. I am very, very big on age-appropriate content, whether it's what my kids watch, read, or play on their phones. Like, we have to give approval when they ask for an app or anything like that. When they check out a library book at school, I have it I get notifications of what books they're checking out. And I asked how these books were getting in the schools. So some of them, of course, are probably being ordered because, like, The Handmaid's Tale is one of the books that was in the schools. Well, that's a popular show for some. Like, my kids aren't allowed to watch it, but it is a popular show. So maybe the more popular books were ordered, but a lot of them, I was told, they'll order a group of books, like a bulk of books from the distributors, and they just throw in freebies.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think that the whole template of our world needs to change, where we are flooded with these images at every turn. It needs to be the reverse, where in order to access these measures, you have to go through certain firewalls. You have to go through certain paywalls, age verification blockers. The walls need to be put in so we minimize the ability that a child, or even as an adult, I don't want to be clicking and seeing these images constantly in my feed. We minimize it so that for the every average day person, they have to take an extra effort to access these images. That I think the whole thing should be turned. G2, what's your opinion on the matter?
Well, I just can't. It's hard really to imagine the real nature of the books you're talking about until people see them. I've seen the list of 100 books, and I've looked at some of them. And to your point, if an average citizen were to give one of those books to a neighbor kid, they could be charged with a crime and sent to jail.
Correct.
And yet somehow it's okay at school systems and it's okay at libraries. It's nice that you've got a mechanism where you're being notified if a child of yours takes out a book at school, but I don't think most parents are getting that. And even if they saw it, a name like Not All Boys Are Blue, an average parent wouldn't understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a serious education gap with parents.
Correct.
And that's a real challenge for you as a candidate. But what I find is the most effective way to overcome that is to actually either get them to a school board meeting where parents often stand up and read these books to the school boards. I've seen school board meetings shut down because the school board refused to allow a parent to read a book on the shelves of a school, or to get them to some kind of a link or something that has where they can see the books for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, you've got other issues that I think are really important. These fiscal issues are important.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's a lot to talk about that they will more easily understand. But if the average Texas parent found out what's happening in these schools, there would be a revolution.
Here's what I'm fascinated with. Okay, because I've gone to these school board meetings, and when you go to these school board meetings as a parent, you get this, you just get this energy, this anxiousness, because you think to yourself, I'm really going to show them. I'm going to show them how sick and twisted these books are. And so you show up, and you read the books to the school board members, and they're completely they don't respond to them. It's like it doesn't register with them. They're like, yeah, okay, so, and then you're just more dejected. You think, how does this person not see the immorality in these books? And these are the people that are making decisions for our child's minds. And what can someone explain the mindset of a leftist? Because I just don't get that. And the open question.
I had a conversation with someone from the State Board of Education who spoke at one of our board meetings and literally asked the board, do you have any questions for me? And they were like, no. And I think it was on the book policy that she spoke about. So that it was funny you said that they just sit there, because that was the feedback I got from somebody from the State Board of Education who the board actually like answers to. Like that's where their policy, you know.
I think it's an ideology, almost a religion, that they just is completely innate in them, and they have this reverse psychology ideology. I'm trying to make excuses for them. I don't know what the answer is.
No.
G2, what's your opinion?
No, but you're close. See, I was at a school board meeting when her parents stood up and read through pornographic, extraordinarily explicit paragraphs in front of a school board. It's not the first time that happened at that school board. It had happened many, many times. So they just sat there and let him do it. The reader turned around to the audience and said, what parent would want their children to get exposed to this kind of pornography in school? And a father stood up and raised his hand and said, I would want my daughters to get that, because that's how we develop critical thinking skills. The parents have been groomed just like the children are now being groomed. Now, maybe they were groomed by television channels and their weird religion, this bizarre woke religion they follow. But there is in a meeting where we might have 200 people show up to a school board meeting, maybe 25% absolutely support pornography in the schools and scream book banning if you try to take it out.
Good answer, G2. I want to move the subject. Okay, so we've talked about we talked about Fort Bend ISD, but now we're going to talk about neighboring Katy ISD. And there's a war brewing there that's just getting started. So you need to tune into the Chris Heasley show every week, because we're going to be covering these school board wars. And the wars are happening. The wars are in Fort Bend. The wars are in Katy ISD. We're going to move to Katy ISD now. I'm going to read a post that was made by a mother in the Katy ISD school district. I'm going to read this post now. I'm going to read this post from a Katy ISD mother. Here is the post. In August 2023, Katy ISD board president Victor Perez, Mary Kuzella, Morgan Calhoun, and Amy Thiem took the bold step to implement the gender policy protecting parental rights and protecting girls' spaces and sports. They have been viciously attacked and slandered by the left ever since. Now, again, I'm sorry, I'm jumping out of the quote for a second. It was Victor Perez, Mary Kuzella, Morgan Calhoun, and Amy Thiem, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name wrong, I apologize, but they took a position for traditional women in women's sports. We know what's going on. President Trump's made an executive order on this. We're trying to get this insanity of these men dressing up as women and then getting into boxing matches and all this other nonsense and beating the daylights out of women. Anyways, so we have some people in the school board that took a good position. I'm going back to the quote now. Quote, their common sense policy was mirrored by districts across the state and the country, and now by the president's order. Shockingly, one second, guys, my eyesight's bad. Shockingly, 3 board members voted against the policy, which notifies parents if your child is changing genders at school. Dawn Champagne supported keeping secrets from parents and making school a safe space for kids to gender transition. It was shocking to be at that meeting and witness this. The board members who voted against this policy have propped up with a school naming and endorsed ex-principal liberal James Cross to run against President Perez. Cross currently works for a far-left lobbyist that has ties to Soros USAID funding. His wife, Mitzi Cross, fought the pro-parent gender policy and called parents' book banners for wanting to remove porn books from the school libraries. Cross is supported by the most radical left in the Austin Swamp, and they are after our $1.3 billion district. I have all of the receipts. Please don't sit this one out, and please donate if you can. Okay, and then she goes on to ask for, I don't want to get into that. Okay, and that's unquote. That is a Katy mom giving a description of the battle that's raging in Katy ISD today. And I want to say here that this woman also expressed some of the frustration that I've had, where she talks about how it was shocking to be at the meeting and witness this. So she's gone through this too. But again, it's the same issue in Katy ISD. I want to say it again. Katy ISD made a comprehensive policy decision to comply with House Bill 900. House Bill 900 essentially eradicates all hypersexualization teachings in schools across the state of Texas. Victor Perez proposed a policy that at the local level that would proactively comply with House Bill 900 in a comprehensive manner, protecting our children. Mary Kazilla, Morgan Calhoun, and Amy Thien voted with Victor Perez to protect our children, but others did not. Others who pushed themselves as conservatives, and now those others have gathered a pretty formidable candidate to go against Victor Perez. And I think largely it could be because of this one issue, because when this issue went down in Katy ISD, it was all the news in Katy, Texas. And so there we have it again. This battle rages on. G2, I'm going to hand it off to you. What is your opinion of this matter in Katy ISD?
Well, the problem we have, I think, is that these school boards are disconnected from the voters, from the parents, and they're serving their own ideology rather than serve those real constituents. So I think it's important that this fight continue, and that you get candidates in place who don't just say they're going to take action, but you get somebody in there who actually will, somebody who's culturally and emotionally committed to defending children. And it's just a much more rare reality than we'd like it to be.
I think I agree with what you're saying, because I've said since the beginning, I think that the people that initially run for these positions, they have good intentions, but they lose sight somewhere in, their term or terms of what they're trying to do. It all becomes so political. So this has been one of the most amazing journeys, just meeting all the people and talking to the kids and the parents and being involved. The worst part is all the politics behind it. That is the worst part. There's so many politics behind it. And, I've been accused of, because I am, I have conservative values and my opponent has conservative values. I've been accused of going to split the vote. I'm not splitting anything, because I'm not representing a party. I'm trying to represent the kids and the teachers and the administrators. So I agree with you. The politics of it just kind of take over.
It's that, and I think also once these board members get seated, the groups that have influence over them are the National School Board Association, the academics who run all the certification and training programs, the administration people, the superintendents and other officers of the school board of the school district, who are held out as experts when in many cases they're just radicals. And so there's a tremendous amount of social pressure on a newly seated school board member to conform, and it's this pressure that they're not an expert and everyone that's been in place before them is. And so it's hard for average people to plant their feet and take that fight.
Okay, great. Chris, what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think this pro-parent position that Victor Perez is taking with the school board and everything, I think it's a good model for how other school boards across the state should also be proactive in their initiation of, having these pro-parent policies. So I think these school board members that are voting, against the parents, they won't be there for that long. With the big, this past 2024 election, there's a big referendum on these transgender policies. I think with the direction how that's going, families are showing that they don't like all these, woke policies and the school board level and schools, and they don't want their children exposed to any of that. So I think it's a great thing that Victor Perez is doing, and so it's a good model for the rest of the country.
And I think it's important, again, I'm going to repeat myself, I think it's important that the community members press the candidates on these issues. Don't let them do double talk. Don't let them do double speak. Get it down in writing, because as Chris said, they know that this is unpopular, but at the same time, there are leftists behind them that are attempting to steer these candidates. And so if we press them on these matters, number one, we'll know where they really stand. And number two, we really push back on these leftists that are operating behind the scenes. I want to cover another item that's happened in this one. I've gotten a lot of texts on from both sides, and I honestly don't know what the truth is on this one. The two items that I've already brought are in the rearview mirror. This one is fairly recent, and it's called VOCA. And VOCA stands for Victims of Crime Act. And as I understand it, I'm going to give two interpretations of VOCA, okay? As I understand it, was put in place to protect children from abusive parents. However, what happened is leftists step in and they start to coach kids on how to position themselves as being abused. And then they know how to declare themselves as a victim, and then they give them medication. Okay, and then this is an effort under the radar to begin the transitioning process, okay? So Katie Christian Magazine did an article on this. I want to see if I can find it, and I'm going to read an excerpt from it. But there is another group that is absolutely refuting Katie Christian, and I'm going to give their opinion too. I do not know the answer to this. I don't know what the truth is, where this stands. But this is an issue that came up in Fort Bend schools, by the way. So here's Katie Christian article. Let me read it here, guys. Texas school districts apply for funding under the Federal Victims of Crime Act, VOCA, parents must be aware of the hidden dangers this program presents to their rights and the authority over their children. While VOCA funding purports to provide support services to victims of crime, it also enables school districts to bypass parental consent, insert governmental authority into our private family matters, and operate under a cloak of secrecy that leaves parents in the dark about their children's well-being. The Katie Christian Magazine article goes on. One of the most alarming aspects of VOCA funding is that it allows school districts to provide services to students without requiring a police report or criminal charges to be filed. This means that children can be deemed victims of crime and funneled into counseling, legal advocacy, and other programs without any official investigation or potential involvement. According to the Office for Victims of Crime Act, let me get that quote straight. According to the Office for Victims of Crime, OVC, these services are accessible to anyone classified as a crime victim, even if law enforcement is never contacted, and that is 34 U.S. Code 20103. By design, the funding sidesteps parents, allowing schools and third-party providers to intervene in a child's life without oversight. This is a direct violation of parental rights, undermining the family unit, preventing parents from being involved in their child's mental health and legal decisions. Okay, so the article goes on. I will refer you to Katie Christian Magazine to get their perspective on this matter. But VOCA, this is a matter that came into Fort Bend County, and there was a formal vote on that. However, I got a different opinion from the Rick Garcia campaign, and he put out a FAQ. It's called FAQ, The Truth About VOCA, and I would say that it directly confronts or it rejects the Katie Christian Magazine article. I'm trying to give both perspectives. I don't know what the truth is. I want the audience to go find the truth. It's up to the audience. And here is what the Rick Garcia campaign posted. What is VOCA? VOCA stands for Victims of Crime Act and is a federal grant designed to help students who have been victims of a crime. The grant is distributed in Texas by application by the governor's office. I'm going to go right to the critical parts. Is parental consent required to gain access to services paid for by VOCA funds? Here's the answer. Yes, parental consent is required before a student can be referred for services and receive services funded by VOCA. Mental health professionals are contracted to provide services at the student's FBISD campus. Is there an exception or loophole where parental consent is not required to receive services funded by VOCA? There is no loophole. There is no loophole. All state and federal laws apply to services paid for by VOCA funds, the same as these laws apply in all other cases. The VOCA grant itself creates no exceptions. So there you have it, guys. We have two opposing opinions on what VOCA is all about. I don't have the answers. And so I'm going to leave it here. Does anyone here have an opinion? Angela, do you have an opinion on this matter?
So I actually met a mom that I would say was a victim of VOCA. Coincidentally, so I am not a public speaker. We all know this. I struggle at times, and
that's okay.
Then I get really passionate about what I'm saying, and I get a little lost, but it's fine. So, it was a mom that was coming on the show. I was going to be on the show with her a couple of weeks ago. And so it was suggested that we talk beforehand so I could be comfortable. And she was just kind of sharing her story. And she said, I don't have a relationship with my daughter. I have strong Christian values, and she wanted to change her gender and da-da-da-da-da. And I don't even know how it happened, but she was taking these gender transformation drugs for over a year. And the VOCA topic had been whirling around. And I was like, I can tell you exactly how it happened. So it actually happened to this woman where her daughter had been given the drugs, the transformation drugs, for over a year before she even found out. And the reason she wasn't put into CPS custody, because I've heard they will even remove children from the homes if they go into these counselors and say, I feel like I'm going to be a victim by my parents, or I'm going to be victimized by my parents because I want to change genders. So in some cases, children have been pulled out of their homes. This did not happen with her because her daughter went to live with her ex-husband. So there was no notification. She's driving, and she had the daughter for visitation, and she's like, hey, can you stop so I can pick up my prescriptions at wherever? And this is in Kansas. So this is all over. It's not just here in Texas. And she asked her daughter, what is that? And she started looking up the names, and it was the gender transformation drugs. And so we had that.
These were provided to her by the schools? Or
by the counseling services. So.
Under with VOCA funding. Mm-hmm. G2, what's your opinion?
Well, all of this movement to categorize parents as abusers, to prevent them from having information, all of this is about these radicals who control many of the school boards, many of the local governments, getting more control and influence over our children. And so it's just, this movement has to be resisted at every turn.
Chris, what's your opinion on this matter?
Yeah, it's interesting how Rick Garcia's statement, directly contradicts that magazine, Katie Christian magazine. But yeah, hearing that story, it's pretty evident that this VOCA could be abused for nefarious purposes. So I think the school board should be confronted on what's the use and the loopholes about VOCA. So yeah, I think it needs to be confronted. Parents need to come together and ask for change for the school board.
I think that within our school boards, there's sort of an elitist attitude where they continue to see their constituents as adversaries. This has to end. They see everything in a villainizing manner, where the parent is the bad guy and they're the good guy. It is the greatest form of egotistical narcissism that exists. There are situations of abuse, and they are on the slight fringe margin of error areas. But every 6 months, we're having another piece of legislation being voted on about somehow parents are bad, school boards are good, protect children from their own parents, the people that love them, the people that care for them, the people that bring them up. I am offended by this continual hammering of this issue.
So 2 things. When I found out about VOCA, I was trying to figure out where to put air tags on my children where they wouldn't know, to make sure they weren't being pulled out of the school. And then I was told it doesn't matter. Now it's happening in the schools. And I don't know. We don't know. But I will say I was at a lunch meeting the other day in, Huffines, maybe? Don?
Don Huffines.
Yes.
Oh, Don, he ran for governor some time ago? Is that Don Huffines?
Yeah,
that's him,
he
yeah.
was speaking the other day, and they just introduced SB 86, which is relating to parental rights in public education and prohibiting instruction regarding sexual orientation and gender identity for public schools. So that was just introduced.
Yeah, I mean, again, we see this war of legislation where we have House Bill 900 come in that attempts to rein in these leftists that are determining the agenda for our children, and the leftists respond by implementing legislation that labels the parent as the villain. And how did we get to a position where schools have been weaponized against us, where we're now adversaries battling it out meeting after meeting after meeting like we're 2 opponents in a boxing match? The society cannot continue in this manner. There needs to be a fundamental upheaval of all leftist ideologies in our school board at the foundational level. I think it's a toxic Marxism. I think it's a mental disorder. And I think that it's very dangerous that these people are so well entrenched in our county level politics and making decisions in so many ways. Remember, it was leftism that brought us the Chinese flu that they dropped on us and then tried to shut us down across the board, right? They were trying to shut down our businesses. They were forcing us to put masks on. They were writing fines to businesses that didn't obey their dictates. They were pushing a very questionable vaccine on us. They were doing medical surveillance campaigns, and then they went to war on the kids. And they tried to get the masks on the kids. When the governor stepped in and removed the masks, they went to a local judge and got the governor overruled. Their narcissism is unending. They cannot stop. They always have to control your child. They always have to control your child. And it has to end. All of the BS needs to be called out. Whatever is the truth about VOCA needs to be found out. I call on all citizens of Fort Bend County to go find out the truth about VOCA, any votes that happened on it, where the candidates laid their vote down, and then the candidates have to answer for their vote and defend it. And saying, I didn't know, or I got it wrong, or I was given bad advice, that does not count any longer. You have to defend your position on the merits of the position. Done. Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think VOCA in general, it was, a positive thing to begin with. But I think the policies on it may have been written a little too broadly to where they could sneak this other aspect of it in.
I question all intentions. I'm the constant cynic. The left has been determining our culture for more than 50 years, and leftism is built on toxic fundamental Marxism, which is an anti-humanity concept where people are bad and totalitarianism is good, where you can't handle your own affairs because you simply aren't mature enough. We need to have the Harvards do it for us. I'm done with that entire ideology. I call for a true sense of Americanism, a sense of the spirit of 1776, a sense of the Texas spirit of 1836. I'm asking all citizens of Fort Bend and Harris County to find their roots, find their foundations in the country, and begin demanding a 1776 type of living. Bring it back to the Constitution as it was actually written in its true form, where all the rights and responsibility were put on the shoulders of the individual and not the state. We have to have a revolution in the greatest manner, in an ideological way. Anyways, guys, we got to finish up here, man. We can go on forever. This is a great show. Any finishing comments, if anyone wants to chime in on the matter, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, I think it was great, Chris, what you're doing with this outreach on the airwaves, telling this issue to the voters of Fort Bend County and Katy ISD, and I think it's a good thing you're doing, so keep up the great work. And
I appreciate you too, because the youth are, they are an integral part in bringing us back. And I know that when you're out there in your position in this conservative youth movement, that you are often ostracized amongst your friends. You've probably lost relationships, but you're taking a stand in the right way. So we appreciate you as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Angela, what's up? What's next?
I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. I am boots on the ground right now, just getting out there, meeting people, saying lots of prayers, because my patience is tested constantly. And I just want everybody to know it's in my heart. I'm not doing this for political gain. I'm not trying to run for this, that, or the other. This is about the kids.
Yeah, again, I'm going to say it again. You are not a politician.
No, absolutely not.
You are completely out of your comfort zone, and anyone who's looking for the, well-spoken, $1,000 suit politician is not going to be found in Angela Collins.
No. Half the time, I wear braids in my hair, and
I think I've seen you in the park in your slippers.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, so been a neighbor of Angela's for some time, and I would say, you're absolutely a grassroots warrior at the same time.
Yes.
So I've seen you fired up on some issues over the years.
Yeah.
So, and with that being said, G2, give us your take, man. Finish us out.
I want to emphasize a point you made just a moment ago, that all of these things start out with a great name. The infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. The use of the language is so good. But when you get into the details of it, as you have, Angela, you start seeing the real darkness behind some of these bills. And it sounds like what you've got there is one that is really a problem. So I'm glad you folks are in the fight, because this fight is nationwide, and we can't afford to cede any more ground to these radical lunatics. So thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we appreciate you too, G2, because we're fighting the battle down here in Texas, but we know the leftists are much more well entrenched up north where you're at. So you got a lot more work to do up there. But with that being said, I want to thank Radiodabang for allowing us to host this hour. Radiodabang has been committed to local issues. And the one thing I'm going to say about this station is that they are not afraid to bring both sides of the issue, right? So clearly, this is one opinionated group. We're coming here through Radiodabang, but at the same time, at another hour, there'll be another group presenting the other side of the issue, and I certainly welcome that. So we appreciate them. And with that being said, this is Chris Heasley. This is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will see you next Saturday, 10 a.m. with one more Hot Topic.